Hi everyone. Not very long ago, I made a little video, kind of a fun video, in which I responded to one of Rick Beato's videos in which he was talking about She's Leaving Home and some of the highlights of the piece for him. Well, I responded with some of the highlights of the piece from my perspective, and I put it out there, and so many of you came back with so many comments and additional thoughts about the piece. It was a lot of fun for me. One of the things that kept coming back in your comments was a request or a wish to know more about my first point in that video, which had to do with the introductory bars of the song She's Leaving Home, where I talked about the harp and the recording editing process and how it came to be what it is. And the thing is, I didn't want to make that video too long or too technical or both. And so I simply mentioned each of those points tried to cover them in a nutshell. But since so many of you came back and said, I would like to know more about this, well, I'm keeping my ears wide open to your comments, and here I am, and we're going to dive into just that. The opening bars of She's Leaving Home, where we have that wonderful harpy introduction that catches me, and makes me sit up straight every time it comes on. And as part of this whole discussion exploration we're going to do now, well, there's going to be a little something showing up which probably will shock those of you who are following this channel regularly. So, to start, the first thing we have to talk about is the harp and some details of how the harp works and how it's constructed. A harp has, in each octave, 7 strings. There are 7 strings per octave. What I mean is, let's say we start on C, and we have C, D, E, F, G, A, B. That's 7. Where's the octave? Of course, we return back to C, and but it's the same as C down here, the same name. So we have come up with 7 distinct note names within each octave. And that's all. It's like just the white notes on the piano. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and now we return to C. Same thing. We're missing the black notes. What to do? Because, well, we kind of need some black notes, don't we? That's where the pedals come in. In addition to the 7 strings in each octave, the harp has 7 pedals down by my feet, which you cannot see, but if I rattle them, you can hear them clunking around down there like a herd of elephants. Trust me, we harpists don't want to sound like a herd of elephants. We put a lot of practice into not sounding like a herd of elephants. Now, each of those pedals operates one of those note names. So, my C pedal operates the C string. Same with a D pedal. And so on. Now, of course, a harp has more than 1 octave. So what to do about all the other C's on the harp? That one C pedal operates all of the C's on the harp simultaneously. Or, if you are not a musician and you don't care to know all the technical names, let me just put it this way. All my red strings here are operated by the same pedal at the same time. So if I play all these red strings, they will change at the same moment. That's my pedal moving down there, and you can hear it changing the string even as I'm not plucking with the resonance. So it's a lot of fun. Each of those 7 pedals has 3 different positions. And as you might have just noticed, each position creates a specific pitch on that string. In musical technical lingo, I have sharp, I have natural, and I have flat. C sharp C natural, C flat. So in order for you to get a little more visual idea of what this means, let's turn to the piano now. If we look at the piano, we have, as the same white notes, we have all the black notes already laid out in front of us. So unlike the harp, I don't have to move my feet or adjust something about the instrument in order to have access to those notes. They are simply there, available. So if I play D, well, it might help if I have the volume up. If I play D, that's D natural. I can move down to D flat. I can move up to D sharp. I can even play all three of them at the same time, which I cannot do on the harp. Same with every single note on the keyboard. I have E, E flat, E natural, E sharp, and so forth. Now, you might notice, though, that since we can move either direction, flat or sharp, or in other words, neighbor down, neighbor up, for any white key, if I'm on D and I move up, neighbor up, that's D sharp. If I'm on E and I move neighbor down, that same note is E flat, because it's having to do with the relationship of that movement from my original location. Which white note did I move from? Did I move upwards from one, or did I move downwards from one? And it just so happens that doing so gives me two different note names, either D sharp or E flat, on the same note. Try to imagine, what if we had on the piano a different key for every single note name available to us? We'd have to have two black notes side by side. We'd have to have one for the D sharp, and we'd have to have another one squished right in here for the E flat. And they would sound pretty much the same. That is the special thing that we can do on the harp. I can take a C and I can make it be a C sharp. At the same time, I can take the D and I can make the D be a D flat. And now I have two strings, both sounding essentially the same. However, having done that, I have had to borrow one of the other notes. I had to take this note and I had to make it become this. And I had to take this note and make it become this. So now while I have two of these sounding notes, I no longer have these two white notes available to me. It's both a beautiful element of what the harp is capable of doing, as well as one of the things that haunt us as harpists, where we have to work around and we have to be creative in our approach to playing. And as a composer, if you're composing for the harp, you also have to keep that in mind, because it's just the nature of the instrument. Now, if you play guitar or violin or some other similar stringed instrument, these concepts will sound quite familiar, because you have much the same possibilities of playing the exact same note on two different strings at the same time. And I'm going to do something which might shock those of you who have followed this channel for a long time and who know me quite well. I am going to pick up the guitar to demo this. How does this look? You like it? Well, please don't watch my technique. As confident as I may be at the harp and the piano, you know that for me to put my hands on a guitar is a whole new world. And please don't try to take guitar lessons from me ever. So I think that the guitar is a kind of hybrid between what I showed you on the piano and what I showed you on the harp. Because the guitar has a certain number of strings available. And let's just take this one. the top string, and this string here, and they each give us a distinct pitch, right? Now, if I place my finger on one of those strings, on the lower string, I can make it play the same note that this open string is playing. So I end up with two of the same pitch, just like on the harp. And since I have this lower string placed here, it also makes the open note unavailable to me. It is now borrowed to become this matching note. Well, I say it's a hybrid between the harp and piano because if I really wanted to get complicated and I still needed this pitch, I could actually create it down here somewhere. Let's see. Yeah, right here. So I could, this is going to get crazy. We still have the same pitches as if I had the top and the second one open as well as stopped or closed. And so I think that that is enough of an introduction so that you get an idea of kind of some of the magical tricks that we can play with instruments. And each instrument has its own specific strengths and weaknesses. So now, what is this all about? And why do we end up talking about all these funny little tricks of the trade when it comes to these instruments when I start to talk about the opening of She's Leaving Home? Well, remember the opening of the song and the shimmering quality of that harp, and it's so incredibly harpy sounding. If you remember my first listen, you'll remember how when it first came on, I basically jumped to attention when I heard it. I kept going back and listening and backing up and trying to make out what on earth is happening, because it sounds like the harpist is playing this kind of trick. Well, we can call it unisons, where we have two notes sounding the same. And it sounds like that's what she's doing for the entire introduction. I can start off like it sounds on the harp if I set up some borrowed unisons, and it sounds pretty good. Let's see. Let's go like this. It's recognizable. You can say, oh yeah, sounds like that. That's what I hear on the opening of the song. But I get to a certain point where I run out of available notes. I run out of notes from which I can borrow to get that same doubled effect. I can't go further simply because it's unavailable to me on the harp. And so if I try to finish the pattern, I have to cheat a little bit. You heard a couple notes where I just lingered and left it for a single note simply because there's nothing else available. Let's do it again. You can recognize it, but anyone who knows the recording is going to know that there's something missing there. It sounds fine, it sounds good, but it's not exactly what I heard on the recording. And as a harpist, I heard that in my first listen. I heard every single note doubled. How did she do that? Well, actually, it's more of a question of how did they do that? Because as it turns out, it wasn't actually the harpist doing it. And by the way, I feel like I should mention, there's a wonderful interview by the harpist who played that opening. Her name is Sheila Bromberg. There's a wonderful little interview by her about this song, which is an utter delight to watch. And she talks about how Paul McCartney wasn't happy with the harp part that was written, the harp part that she played. Well, I did this in my first video that I did a few weeks ago. This is how it was written. That's what was written on the score. And McCartney wasn't really thrilled with how it sounded. He wanted something, but he didn't seem to be able to explain what it really was that he wanted. How could he couldn't seem to express what really was he looking for. And so, as the accomplished sessions harpist that she was, she tried out different things on different takes. And the interview goes into the details of it. She tried to dress it up a bit, tried to modify it a bit, hoping to help him kind of figure out and identify which direction he wanted to go with it. But none of them fully satisfied him. And the recording session went on. And by the end of it, it was midnight. The violinist, a part of the string orchestra that was involved in the piece, stood up and said, basically, it's time to quit. We're all going home because we've got work to do in the morning. So Paul never did get exactly what he was looking for. They kept trying and trying. Time to quit. Oh, that's that then. It turns out that the magic touch was created after the recording session, was created in the editing and engineering phase. Using her first take, using this, that was exactly written on the score. Using that without any modifications or improvs, and simply doubling the track. Essentially playing the same thing over twice, doubling it, but with the doubled version slightly offset to give the twice plucked effect, or this borrowed synonym, or in musical lingo terms, enharmonic equivalence. And that is what makes this opening just, I want to say get up and walk, but it's more than that. It take off and fly. It's what makes it be what it is. As much as I love the harp, as much as I'm a passionate harpist, this is why I gave credit in that video I did a few weeks ago to the recording, engineering, and editing effects applied to this opening, because there is no other way to get that sound in that opening with those particular notes on the harp. It is there. It's okay to start, but you saw we reach a point where I don't have anything available to me on the instrument. It is the genius of whoever in the engineering team in the studio afterwards said, let's try this. And that is what makes this opening so incredibly magical and so harpy. Isn't it ironic that something that is impossible to play on the harp sounds so perfectly representative of the harp? Well, that's how it was done. Simply doubling. And that's why it was done, because it wasn't possible any other way. And fortunately, somebody figured out what McCartney was really aiming for. And I'm so glad for that, because I think that it's one of the things that makes that song so incredibly special. So that's my deep exploration of that particular comment that I made in that video a couple of weeks ago. I hope you all enjoyed this. And I hope that, I would love to hear from you about your thoughts and experiences and what you hear in the piece, especially in this opening, since I'm talking about the opening. And how many of you have tried to, create a similar sound on whatever instrument you're playing, whether it's piano, harp, guitar, violin? And have you run into any other, not necessarily She's Leaving Home or even Beatles or even rock, examples in music where a certain sound or effect is desired and how to achieve it. Do you have any of those magical moments of, this is how we do it, whether it's with the instrument or with technology after? I'd love to hear. So please share your thoughts in the comments. I'm looking forward to reading them. I'll see you soon.